Audio 8.4.
Our next guest is a leading psychologist, and he's here today to talk about happiness. Dr. Draymore, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here.
So I'll get straight to the point. What is it that makes us feel happy?
Well, let's start with what doesn't, shall we? The most common mistake people make about happiness is to attach it to material gain. You know, that house or car you're finally going to buy after years of saving up. Not going to make you really any happier, I'm afraid.
Is there any scientific evidence of that?
Plenty. For instance, over the last century or so, life has improved enormously in all financial and social indicators. But our levels of happiness have remained pretty much the same. Another thing that doesn't necessarily make you happier are those life-changing moments, like getting married. Studies indicate that when people get married, their level of happiness goes up considerably for the first 2 years, but then goes back to where they were.
That might not surprise some of our audience too much.
But the good news is that the same is true for tragic events too, like the death of someone close to you. There is a strong dip in our happiness, but it soon goes back to what some scientists call the baseline.
So, how can we be happier then?
In short, a combination of 3 things: pleasure, engagement, and meaning.
Let's talk a bit about each one.
Well, we all know what pleasure is, that warm feeling we get when we listen to a good joke or eat something nice. Engagement refers to how much the individual is connected to what they are doing. The perfect state of engagement is when you're so deeply involved in what you are doing that you forget about the world around you. So it's worth reflecting on how often you find yourself in such a state of mind and what kinds of activities get you there.
So, would something like gardening count?
Oh yes, hobbies are a great way to achieve this state. And then the last thing is what's known as meaning. This refers to the knowledge that we are part of something bigger and that our life has a purpose.
So, you need a bit of all 3 of these.
Yes, that's the magic formula, really. The problem is, we live in a society that encourages people to focus mostly on just one of these things.
Would that be pleasure?
Exactly. Fulfilling our immediate desires. Unfortunately, of the 3, pleasure is the one that contributes the least to our overall happiness.
OK, so now we know what makes us happy, but what can we do to achieve it?
Well, the first thing to do is to find out what you've got too much of and what you're not getting enough of. As I said, most of us will find we're focusing too much on pleasure, but there'll also be quite a few career-minded people out there who are so engaged with their jobs that they're neglecting their pleasure. So if it's more pleasure you need, obviously you have to find out what things give you pleasure and do more of them. And another important point is studies show that pleasure increases if you're with a relative or friend.
I see. And you've already mentioned hobbies for engagement. What else?
Well, engagement is mostly a question of attitude. Dedicate yourself as much as possible to the task at hand and try to concentrate on immersing yourself into it. Don't let your mind wander off in other directions.
And then finally, meaning?
Yes. 2 very important things here. Firstly, doing something selfless, like voluntary work, for instance, is a great way to have a purpose in your life which is beyond your own personal needs and desires. And then there's also being grateful. Acknowledging what you're grateful for and who you are grateful to really does work wonders.
Well, that was all really fascinating. Dr. Draymore is staying with us and will be taking your calls after this traffic update. So get your questions ready.